You're listening to Tongue of the Serpent, where every family keeps its ghosts, and some of them still answer when you call their name. Tonight, a woman walks into the crew of the Morning Star, asking for help. Her sister speaks in a dead language and dreams of a house that drowned long ago. But when Lucien Devereaux hears that voice, it isn't the living he remembers. It's the promise he broke a century ago, and the sister he left behind in the water. Season 2, Episode 7, Ghost of the Past. A familiar face. The bell above the door chimed like a soft warning. Evelyn looked up from the counter, where she'd been cataloging a box of cursed thimbles. Don't ask. And she saw the woman standing in the doorway. She was all sharp lines and storm-gray eyes, her dark coat still flecked with rain. She didn't hesitate. She walked into the shop like she remembered it from a dream. Lucien Devereaux appeared from the back moments later, wiping dust from his hands, his expression shifting the moment he saw her.
Dr. Renault,
he said with a warmth Evelyn rarely heard in his voice.
Alice.
Evelyn's fingers paused mid-scribble. Alice gave him a tight smile.
I need your help again.
Lucien didn't ask why. He stepped closer, concern overtaking his usual irony.
What's wrong?
It's my sister,
Alice said, her voice catching.
Celeste. A few months ago, she started speaking in French, but not just French, Creole French, old 18th or early 19th century, I think. And she doesn't remember doing it afterwards.
Evelyn stepped closer, saying nothing. Alice pressed on, explaining that at first they thought it was a fugue state, then maybe possession. They called priests, psychologists, linguists. No one could explain it, but she kept saying the name Lucien, Devereaux, Morning Star, over and over, as if waiting for something or someone. Lucien's brows drew together. The name Lucien Devereaux, his name, hadn't been spoken aloud by a stranger in years, and never by someone who shouldn't know it.
She doesn't remember me,
Alice continued.
But something inside her does.
Lucien was quiet for a long moment, and Evelyn saw something flicker behind his eyes. Recognition, fear, maybe even guilt.
I thought it was over,
Alice said.
After the preacher, after that night, but something came through Lucien. I don't know how, but it's back, and it's using my sister as a door.
Lucien nodded slowly.
I'll help.
Evelyn, still watching from behind the counter, spoke for the first time. Do you want me to come? Lucien glanced at her, hesitated. Alice answered gently instead.
It's probably best if it's just us for now.
Lucien gave Evelyn a brief, unreadable look.
We won't be long.
Evelyn smiled politely, but her eyes didn't match. She turned back to her cataloging as they left the shop together. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the quarter still held the smell of thunder. Something was returning, and Evelyn wasn't sure if it was meant for Alice's sister or for Lucien himself. The possessed sister. The house stood crouched beneath a curtain of moss-draped oaks, pale green shutters faded by time and storms. A Creole cottage in the Marigny, with bones older than the city's maps, and secrets that whispered through the floorboards. Alice unlocked the door with careful fingers, as if afraid it might bite. Inside, the air was warm but uneasy. The house smelled of gardenia and burning herbs. Somewhere a clock ticked out of rhythm.
She's resting,
Alice murmured, leading Lucien down a narrow hallway.
but she always knows when someone's coming.
Lucien stepped into the small parlor. The curtains had been drawn, and the light was dim, golden, flickering like a candle flame, even though no candles burned. Celeste sat on a fainting couch, her long dark hair braided and draped over one shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open as they entered. For a moment, she looked entirely herself, tired but present, a woman in her early 30s who bore the weight of sleepless nights and too many questions. Lucien offered a gentle nod.
Bonjour, Celeste.
She smiled faintly.
You're the man my sister talks about.
And then her body stiffened. Her eyes rolled back just for a second, and when they returned, they were not the same. The warmth was gone. Something older had taken hold. Her head tilted, her lips curled, not cruelly, but with a kind of terrible fondness.
Mon petit loup.
She whispered. Lucien's breath caught in his throat. No one had called him that in over a century. No one alive remembered that name. Not since,
Sabine.
he said, barely audible. Celeste's, or rather, Sabine's gaze softened.
You were always hiding under the stairs, with your books. Always pretending you didn't hear Father yelling.
Lucien took a step back, shaking his head.
This isn't real.
But the voice continued, threading through the years as if they hadn't passed.
You used to tell me you'd protect me, that one day you'd make a deal with the stars if it meant we could run away.
Alice stood frozen, her mouth open, her hands trembling.
Lucien.
Sabine said, no, Celeste said, in a voice that wasn't hers.
You left us. You forgot.
Then, like the sudden extinguishing of a flame, her body sagged. Celeste gasped and collapsed sideways on the couch, blinking furiously as if waking from deep underwater.
What happened?
Alice rushed to her, clutching her sister's hands. Lucien stood still. The color had drained from his face. He was no longer in the room. He was a boy again, hiding behind velvet drapes, hearing his father curse and his sister weep. The memory came not like a dream, but like a door cracking open at the back of his mind, letting in smoke and silence. Sabine had died before the mansion vanished. He had not thought of her in decades, because he had chosen not to. Now the past was clawing its way out of the grave he'd buried it in, and it bore his sister's voice, and it remembered everything. Sabine's ghost. The house didn't sleep. Not really. Long after Alice had gone to bed, with Celeste resting fitfully in the next room, Lucien wandered through the narrow halls, like a ghost in his own right. The wooden floors creaked beneath his boots, whispering secrets he didn't want to hear. Alice's home was a strange blend of the modern and the reverent. She'd clearly inherited or collected pieces of Louisiana's past. Oil paintings in chipped gilt frames, lace doilies yellowed by time, a glass curio cabinet holding pressed flowers and porcelain saints. The kind of place where the air remembered things long after people had forgotten. His fingers drifted over a small music box on a shelf, wrought iron and mother of pearl. He opened it. The lullaby that played was one he hadn't heard in 100 years. He saw Sabine's face in the mirror above the mantel. The memory uncoiled like a ribbon soaked in perfume. He was 9, hiding under the velvet skirts of a table in the parlor. His hands trembled, clutching a worn tarot card, the Fool. His father had declared the cards satanic and thrown them into the fire more than once. Sabine had pulled him out from under the table. She was 12, clever and brave in ways that didn't last.
Shh.
She'd whispered, brushing his hair out of his face.
Don't cry, mon petit loup. You're not foolish. You're a door, a key. They don't know what that means yet.
She tucked the cards into her bodice and smuggled them back to him later, wrapped in a silk handkerchief embroidered with violets. That was the last night he remembered her smiling. Weeks later, they found her body in the garden fountain. She'd drowned. No one knew how. No one asked. In the present, the mirror above the fireplace fogged, without breath. Lucien turned slowly. Celeste stood in the hallway, but her eyes weren't hers.
Sabine.
He said again, this time not with fear, but with sorrow. She stepped toward him, barefoot, her voice quiet and too old for the girl who wore it.
You promise?
She said, but it was a promise he'd made as a child.
You remember now?
I didn't leave you.
Lucien whispered.
I was taken. The deal I didn't know it would cost. I lost everything.
No.
Sabine said, her face twisting, not in anger, but grief so deep it seemed to shatter the air.
You gave us away. You walked into that crossroad with your name on your lips and no thought of what it meant. You wanted power, freedom, whatever you thought would make you whole.
Lucien's voice broke.
I didn't know what I was doing.
But you still did it.
She stepped closer. Her hands hovered inches from his chest, not touching.
You've forgotten all of us, over and over, and I'm the only one who clawed my way back to remind you. You chose to forget. But I'm still here.
And with that, she vanished, like smoke pulled backward into the mouth of the night. Lucien stood in the silence, heart pounding. In the other room, the music box was still playing. Uncovering the past. The morning brought no peace. Celeste slept, wrapped in layers of wool blankets, despite the warmth in the air. Her breathing was shallow but steady, as if whatever force had borrowed her voice had finally receded for now. Lucien and Alice combed through the cluttered parlor, searching her collection of old books, family heirlooms, and crumbling antiques. Dust hung in golden beams from the slatted windows, and the air was thick with the scent of lavender and old paper. Alice worked in near silence, her brow furrowed, her fingers nimble and quick, as she opened boxes and flipped through fragile papers.
I didn't think to look at my own collection.
She murmured.
Not like this. I thought it was a haunting or maybe something neurological, not
Her voice caught.
family.
Lucien didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere, fractured between the present and the long, closed halls of a childhood he'd sealed behind a name he no longer claimed. Then Alice paused.
Here.
Behind the warped glass of an old mirror, tucked in like a secret note passed during chapel, was a faded prayer card. A woman cloaked in blue, her eyes downcast, halo cracked with age. But it wasn't the card that mattered. It was what was scrawled on the back. Lines and lines of delicate, looping French script. Lucien read it slowly, voice hushed, as if the air might bite back.
Que mon nom ne soit pas si facile, que mon souvenir vive, me mépris longtemps.
Let my name not be erased. Let my memory live, even at the cost of shadows. It was more than a prayer. It was a binding, a plea, and something else. A curse laid bare in ink and grief. Lucien traced the name at the bottom. Sabine Devereaux. A knock at the door. Evelyn stood on the porch, with a wrapped bundle in her arms and an unreadable expression. "I thought you might need this," she said quietly, holding it out. Inside, an ornate hairbrush, a small monogrammed comb, and a handkerchief embroidered with violets. Lucien blinked.
Where did you?
"It was in the artifact room," she said, tucked in a box labeled "Items with no origin." He took it with care, something unspoken settling in his chest. Alice watched them, silent. Evelyn said nothing more, but her presence altered the room, like a wind had shifted. Lucien stood a little straighter, spoke a little softer, and the ghosts in the walls listened. The air in the artifact room felt heavier than ever, as if the objects knew what was about to take place. Lucien moved with practiced stillness, placing Sabine's items at the center of the salt circle. He poured salt water into a wide porcelain bowl, its rim cracked but still strong. The water shimmered faintly, catching glints from the flickering candles he'd set at the circle's edges. The sigils drawn on the floor were old, older than he should have remembered, but his fingers moved without hesitation. Celeste lay within the circle, pale and damp, with fevered sweat, her breath uneven. Alice knelt beside her, clutching her sister's hand, her eyes darting from Lucien to the chalk markings, uncertain but resolute.
Will this work?
She asked. Lucien didn't look up.
It has to.
He began the invocation in French, his voice low, melodic. The words came not from study, but from memory. They tasted like dust and violets. The air shifted. The flames of the candles stilled. The scent of brine and lilies filled the air. And then she was there, Sabine. She stood just outside the circle, her form wavering, her eyes sharp. Her face was exactly as he remembered, older than his child self, but not by much. With that fierce, protective softness he had so long tried to forget.
Mon petit loup,
she whispered. Lucien's throat tightened.
I'm sorry.
Her gaze narrowed.
I didn't make the deal to save you,
he said. The words cut his pride open.
I wasn't noble. I was just afraid. I wanted out. I wanted more. I thought if I had power, I wouldn't have been ordinary. I wouldn't have been forgotten.
Sabine stepped closer. Her presence crackled like a storm behind glass.
You thought the deal would erase us?
She asked. He nodded, slowly.
I thought, if I let it all go, it couldn't hurt anymore. That I could become something else, something better.
You gave us away,
she said, not accusingly, but as a simple truth.
But forgetting doesn't unmake what we were, and it doesn't unmake you.
Lucien looked down.
Do you forgive me?
She smiled, sadly.
Not because you deserve it, but because someone has to remember us, and that someone is still you.
With that, her form began to dissolve, a mist drawn back into the objects in the salt water. As she faded, a wind passed through the room, and Celeste gasped. She sat up, weeping quietly, her hands gripping the floor, the breath rushing back into her as if she'd surfaced from drowning. Alice gathered her into her arms, murmuring her name. Lucien said nothing. He watched the objects as they lay still, no longer humming, just metal and memory. Sabine was gone, but not forgotten. Aftermath. Lucien stood in the back room of the crew, a man built of bones and bargains, lit by the amber hush of gaslight. The silence between them stretched, brittle and waiting, until he spoke, not loudly, but as if the words had been trapped behind his teeth for centuries.
I don't think I've ever looked at who I used to be.
He confessed, voice frayed like old velvet.
Not properly. I spent so long pretending the past was a story someone else told.
Evelyn tilted her head, her eyes kind. Then gently, as though cradling something breakable. But you still don't know who you are. Not all of it. Later, the quarter swallowed them whole. The streets shimmered with that peculiar half-light, where gas lamps hum lullabies to passing ghosts, and the air smells faintly of jasmine, regret, and rain on stone. Lucien Devereaux walked beside Evelyn, closer than usual, his shoulder nearly brushing hers. He spoke more than he had in months, maybe years. Words tumbled out like loose teeth.
I think...
He hesitated.
I'm afraid there's nothing at the center of me. Just layers. Ghosts of who I might have been. Deals I made. Lies I told myself.
Evelyn didn't stop walking. She didn't need to. Her voice was steady, like the hush of wings in a cathedral. Maybe that's all any of us are. Collections of choices and echoes. But even ghosts get to decide what they haunt. He looked at her then, and in the quiet, something in him unclenched. They wandered deeper into the fog, swallowed by the murmuring dark of old New Orleans. Above them, the wrought iron balconies webbed ivy and secrets. The gas lamps flickered once, as if winking at a joke they'd overheard 100 years ago. Behind them, the wind shifted, soft and strange, and carried with it the faintest echo of a girl's laughter. It might have been memory, or it might have been something older. Either way, they didn't look back. The ghosts have gone quiet. The mirror of memory has closed. For now. In a city that feeds on stories, Lucien has finally remembered his own. Sabine is at rest, for now. But the past, once named, never truly leaves. It lingers in the hush between footsteps, in the corners of the shop, in the voice that almost sounds like forgiveness. You've been listening to Tongue of the Serpent, stories from the haunted heart of New Orleans, where blood remembers. And every door you open leads somewhere you've already been. Until next time, keep your promises soft and your ghosts gentler still. The serpent never forgets.